afford to pay. And so it's not that poor people can't afford to have eating disorders, they just can't afford to get treatment for them. So the survey study that we did showed that a significant majority of eating disorder cases don't get adequate coverage. The number was 64% of people did not get adequate coverage by their insurance, and people do die because of this. The only reason I was able to get such good treatment was that someone named Anna Weston died after Blue Cross refused to pay for her treatment, and a group of people, including Paul Wellstone, sued them. And so I got incredibly lucky. Blue Cross covers 100% of everything for that reason. And I was very lucky because I've been on Minnesota Care most of my life, and it just happened to be in graduate school when I got sick, so I had Blue Cross then. Most people are not that lucky, as we can see. Also, insurance companies take a cue from the diagnostic criteria we just talked about, to, like I said, to refuse to pay after a certain weight is reached. They also will not cover EDNOS, so, which is kind of the same as similar to, not paying after a certain weight is reached. Alright, so those lucky few who make it past the diagnostic and insurance hurdles still face problems with treatment. So we've already seen some examples of how doctors can unintentionally cause a lot of harm to patients. And a lot of Drug Project members have had such a horrible experience when they initially sought help from a doctor that they avoided any further treatment seeking and came to us. So one of the problems here is that general practitioners, have spent very little time in their schooling learning about eating disorders, maybe an hour. So they rely on the APA's diagnostic criteria. And as we saw a minute ago, those criteria don't really reflect what an eating disorder is. So they also encourage minimizing the problem, which leads to a bigger problem in the end. I don't think general practitioners can be expected to become very expert in eating disorders, but I would expect that the experts in American Psychological Association would give criteria for general practitioners to use that are helpful for them rather than causing a lot of minimization of problems and barriers to treatment seeking. So, and then we also already talked a little bit about how the physical criteria of diagnosis promote unhelpful treatment strategies in some providers. Although I want to stress that there are a lot of very good treatment centers out there that will treat the whole disorder, not just the physical complications. Next section, the last section, is what you can do. This is the quote is from our website, and it's one of my favorites on the list of do's and don'ts relating to with eating disorders. So I do have more literature on the table about the do's and don'ts in relating to someone with an eating disorder. They're supposed to be in a pamphlet form, but we don't have an office, and I also don't have good printing capabilities, so they're just stapled together. It's 2 sheets stapled together. Alright, so here's a summary of that list that's over there. Alright. I think a lot of people think it's okay to talk about their own weight. Like we see here, don't discuss anyone's weight, eating habits, or appearance. That includes you. And I think a lot of people think it's okay to talk about their own weight in a disparaging way without considering the implications that carries for everyone around us. So if I say I'm fat, that means that everyone else my size is fat too, and it also implies that being fat is unacceptable. Someone with an eating disorder, even if they are thin, may be terrified that they're going to gain weight if they aren't super vigilant. And they also may not be aware that they look thin to others. I always like to discourage people from complimenting based on appearance or even weight loss, because that says that looking a certain way which is really out of anyone's control for the most part. It makes someone a better person. And I never comment if someone loses weight because I don't know how they lost it. It could have been unhealthy. So, let's see, and when I say don't try to fix it, I mean don't give simplistic advice. So don't say, for example, you just need to relax, or you need to eat blank and not blank, or you need to take responsibility for your actions. Those types of things invalidate the pain and minimize the problem. And we like to give advice because it makes us feel like we helped, and then we don't have to worry about the problem anymore. But what actually helps is to listen and face the problem with someone. And it's also the more difficult option. It's also not comforting, under deny the problem. It's not comforting to hear things like, oh, everyone feels that way sometimes, or you're not that bad, you ate lunch today. Because it may be meant to make someone feel better, but it actually is very invalidating to someone who's suffering more than is normal. So, don't judge the person, but also it's better to not judge food in front of someone that you know has an eating disorder. So saying, oh, McDonald's is so bad for me, to you it may mean that you don't want to eat McDonald's every day, but you'll eat it every once in a while if it's the only option or because you like it, and that's fine. To someone with an eating disorder, it could translate to, if I've ever eaten McDonald's in my life, I'm a horrible person. And obviously you can't be responsible for every distortion that an eating disorder is going to come up with. But just think about, how important is it to actually talk about your diet? Does you need to talk about it, and do you need to talk about food a lot of the time? I don't know. So one thing I would do is not talk about your diet around someone that you know has an eating disorder. That's really difficult. And another thing you can do is support the Joy Project mission in various ways. There's a lot of ways you can do that. You're already here, so you've got the Educate Yourself and Others card started. You can add us on Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, LinkedIn. You can volunteer in a lot of different ways. There's information about that on joyproject.org. You can also email volunteer coordinator at joyproject.org, which is me now. So you could talk to me also. And there's an application on the website. If you've heard of Good Search, it's like Google, except you can designate a charity to receive money every time you use it to search. If you're not already using that for something else, you could designate the Joy Project as your charity. When I was talking before about the Roots of Recovery program we're trying to get started, we are actually in the running for a Pepsi Refresh grant in June and now in July for the whole month. That requires getting enough votes to be in the top 10, and then we would get $25,000 to try to put that program into place. And that's at refresheverything.com/joyproject. And you can vote every day in July. You can donate at joyproject.org. Oh, there's flyers about that over there too. And you can donate at joyproject.org or through the Facebook Causes application. You can recommend us to anyone needing help. Educate yourself and others. You can also bring a Joy Project staff member to your organization. We do accept an optional $100 honorarium for eating disorder training presentations. And that money will go to the Joy Project, but it's also optional, so we don't have to get any money. And then you can pay attention to upcoming events, which I will probably keep you informed of. We're having a 5K walk, hopefully this fall. So look for that. And thank you for your time. We're kind of running late, but if anyone has questions, I can answer them.
What percentage did you say of the eating disorders, what percentage generally has some past trauma?
It was 67%, according to one study. It's very, very common.
So that can take years to recover. There's some people who kind of survive and never really recover.
Yeah, that's very common. Full recovery is not the most common outcome. It's more common to continue to suffer or to recover partially so that you have a higher quality of life. I don't remember exact numbers, but I think it's only, maybe around a third who fully recover to the point of not having to think about eating ever. Living a really full life. And we're trying to change that. I don't think that's a necessary consequence of the disorder. I think it's a consequence of treatment problems. And other things like that. Yep, Sheila?
So if I recall correctly, this anorexia kind of got national attention in the 70s when Karen Carpenter died.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really surprises me that 30-some years later, there's all this diagnosis issue, this two-thirds of other, and then this health insurance sort of corresponding problem. Is it, the reason that that's still the situation 30 years later, is it kind of a vicious circle of those things, or some other reason? Why?
I can understand why insurance companies are going to do everything they can to not pay because they're trying to make a profit and it's really expensive.
So just like other mental health issues, it's just kind of part of that problem, you think? Or?
Yeah, although eating disorders are much more expensive to treat than other mental health usually. The thing about the diagnostic criteria and even eating disorder experts being kind of underinformed, that is much harder for me to understand. Part of it may be that they want to hold on to older research that was based on these diagnostic criteria, and you can't use that to compare to newer research that uses different criteria. But a lot of the researchers have taken their own initiative to study populations that aren't fully diagnosable as anorexia because they recognize that it's such a huge population, and they also have started to use outcome measurements other than recovery as defined by the DSM. So a study will talk about partial recovery, meaning gaining enough weight to not be anorexic, versus full recovery, which is recovery. So there are definitely a lot of people recognizing this, but I don't know, it's been really difficult to kind of get the high up authorities, I guess, to change it. They're really tied to the weight requirement, it seems, and they will use evidence that's really not that valid. All the old studies they want to hold on to, a lot of them aren't statistically very valid, and there's a lot of confounding variables that exist. So it's hard to understand why they want to hold on to that so much.
Yep. Does the Joy Project work very extensively with people who, rather than binging, purging, not eating, who they eat to resolve their psychological problems so that they would be overweight rather than underweight?
Yeah, binging only refers to the act of overeating in a short period of time. So those people with binge eating disorder can be overweight. But there's also compulsive overeating, which covers